Welcome back to the postgame show on the podcast. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis, after Ohio State's 41-7 win over Purdue in West Lafayette. We are not there. We are not wet. We are in our houses. We will talk about everything good and interesting about this Ohio State game. We'll start teasing, right, Landis? We have like 9 versions of previewing Penn State for next week.
Yeah.
We can do a tiny little touch on that, but we're not going to dig in on that yet because, Penn State hasn't played yet, but we want to talk about these Buckeyes, and we are going to talk about first what we like the most about this convincing, just from the jump, in a house of horrors. 5 losses in West Lafayette since 2000, the weirdest stat associated with Ohio State football in the last 2 decades. Landis, they came out and took care of business. What did you like the most?
Like 2 things I think kind of dovetailed in this game. One is Ohio State needed to figure out what it wanted to do running the football. And the other is the way Purdue playing defense, lending itself to, I think, like not running the wide zone stretch play that Ohio State has run so much and like looked terrible last week. And I think a lot of us believe they should stop running or at least stop featuring it as much. So they didn't do that. I think they ran it once in this game. And they tried to throw.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think they tried to throw a play action pass off of it another time. They ran some like mid zone stuff. There's like intricacies there to like, is it mid zone? Is it wide zone? What is it? Like the full zone stretch play into the boundary, I believe only showed up one time, at least, early on when the game was still quasi in the balance. They ran a lot of gap scheme. They ran a lot of counter in this game. They built some play action pass off of counter, which I really like to see. So I think the thing that I like the most was just like sort of generally the plan to run the football against a defense that is not particularly good at stopping the run, right? You wanted to see Ohio State come out and run the football and kind of impose itself physically, I think, on Purdue. And they didn't end up putting up a huge number, but in the first half, they ran for 136 yards, and I thought looked like how Ohio State should look when it wants to run the football.
Ohio State, 497 total yards in this game. They threw for 334. That's 276 for Kyle McCord, 58 for Devin Brown. They ran it 39 times for 163. That's a 4.2 yard average. But their main dudes, Dallin Hayden, 11 carries for 76. That's 6.9 yard average. Xavier Johnson, 5 carries, 39. That's a 7.8 yard average. Chip Trayanum, before he got hurt, 6 carries for 28. That's a 4.7 yard average. We'll save the Devon Brown package for later because that we could go 45 minutes on the Devon Brown package.
Yeah.
The basics of the run game as we think about this, because I think everybody watching liked it. 30 passes, 39 runs. Okay. But that's a little bit late game stuff, whatever. I track sort of their variety on first down. I want to get into that a little bit later. I liked that. The things that you like the most about the run game, what you're talking about, do you expect this is a change? This is how they are going to do it now? Or was it specifically related to Purdue's defense? And let's keep it on scheme for now before we dig in on the personnel and the guys who are carrying it.
Yeah, I mean, my answer to that is I don't know, because I made a comment earlier in the week, like sometimes we see Ohio State change stuff for a game, and it's more of like a thing to get on tape, and then they sort of revert back to what they do when they get into the bigger game. So I guess I'm on alert for it for the Penn State game, for them to go back to running a lot of zone stuff. The thing, like Purdue plays with a 5-man front, and it's hard to run wide zone against that. And if you watch the Purdue throughout the year, they've given up a lot of rushing yards. Teams have had a lot of success running gap schemes, and in particular running the counter play that Ohio State ran today. So schematically, they had a great plan for what Purdue throws at them. Penn State is not going to throw the same thing at them. Yeah. It'll be more of like a traditional 4-down front. So they could get back to running more zone play. But like I've thought all year that this line looks much better running gap schemes. And like they had one last week that looked terrible against Maryland. Like guys were blocking their teammates. But if you remove that play from the equation, I thought they have looked better running those types of plays. And I thought it was promising that after all the discussion about we got to figure out what works, we got to go back to the drawing board a little bit, they came out and they did that stuff. But it's hard to like embrace because that's also what works best against Purdue. So I don't know if it's what they're going to do moving forward.
Did you think the offensive line looked more comfortable? Did you think just the functionality of everything they did as a result of the adjustments was better?
Yeah, I thought they were winning the line of scrimmage more often than not. There were a few short yardage runs that I didn't love where I still think they're playing a little too high and not getting good enough leverage, but they also like had the QB sneak, which was great too. So yeah, generally I thought the offensive line was better and more comfortable in this game.
I almost think they threaded the needle here because it was good, but it wasn't too good. Like it wasn't so good that it was like, well, that's it. I guess they're just going to run the ball 75% of the time. It was functional, right? It was
Yep.
like, okay, well, maybe I want him to throw it 80% of the time, but Ryan Day is never going to actually do that. They mixed it up a little bit. There was more variety in what they did, but I don't think they're going to go into Penn State and say, we got to jam it down Penn State's throat. But I think they will go into Penn State and say, hey, we have a little confidence in our run game for us to be balanced with again, the constant conversation around this run game. If they would have come out and run for 450 on Purdue, I would have been like, oh God, not that. This was, I think, right in the correct realm of progress, but let's not kid ourselves. You still got to throw to win.
Yeah, and I think it's good to build confidence. I actually, like you said, functional. I like that it was purposeful. Like last week, I thought they were running just sort of to run, and this week they were running and running well, but they were using specific run plays to set up specific pass plays, and they hit 2 play action passes off of like fake counter run action, both to Kate Stover, one on his second touchdown. It was like, yeah, like that's what it is. Like you don't just continually bash your head against the wall running run plays that don't work and then like have no payoff for it. And like today, they were running run plays that happened to work, and also they got the payoff with the pass game too, and like building things on top of one another. I thought it was probably their best sort of like game plan of the season in terms of like exploiting weaknesses and sequencing plays together.
Yeah, the art, right? The art of play calling, not just the science. Sometimes you can sort of feel a play caller get in a zone, and sometimes you can feel a play caller fighting against himself. This felt like in a world where number 1 running back out, number 2 running back out, number 3 running back goes out, but Ryan Day and Brian Hartline and that entire offensive staff, it felt like they knew what they wanted to do and how to approach it. I don't know, listen, they still had a couple first down runs that went for nothing, went for 1, went for 2. Wasn't a ton of them though. It felt like they knew what they wanted to do and how to do it. It did not feel, I don't know. Did they bang their head against a wall once? Not a lot of banging.
No, I don't think so. Even on the one stretch play they ran, I think they got 5 yards, and like it wasn't. I still think you want to show that a little bit because they do try to set up a lot of play action pass off of those looks as well. So like as I said during the week, like that's not going to go away, and I don't think it should go away completely. Like Justin Fry said the same thing. Like we're not going to scrap it. We built too much around it to totally scrap it from our playbook. But it did feel like they picked, 3 or 4 schemes, run schemes in particular, because there was the counter, there was a couple of like crack sweeps that they got nice gains on, and really hyper focused on them and came out and ran them, I thought, really well against Purdue.
So we're going to take some questions from our tech subscribers later in the show. If you want to be a tech subscriber, you can join us there for a 2-week free trial. You send a text to 614-662-4509 to sign up. But I see someone in our YouTube chat here as we do this live on YouTube saying the offensive line still stinks, right? You can't trade for people, right? You can't trade for Joe Alt. It's like, Notre Dame, if they lose to USC, I think they might have a fire sale. Maybe we can trade for Joe Alt. You can't do it. They are what they are. So I don't know that anybody is waiting for or expecting a dominant run game. We know the deal, what this deal is with the offensive line. I don't think are there any Ohio State fans holding their breath for, wait until this lot, right? No.
Yeah.
That's not. Like they're not. But can they be functional with what they have? And I think this was a version of that, a functionality that allows the balance, that allows the pass game. And I do feel like it was a little more like throw to set up the run because they came out and threw on first down. This is one of the things I wanted to talk about. This is what I liked. Coming into the game, I think they had thrown on first down. They had 76 run plays and 61 pass plays on first down coming into the game. Today, I stopped tracking like once it didn't matter anymore. But when it mattered, they had 15 pass plays on first down and 14 run plays. It's more towards 50-50. They came out and they threw the ball to Julian Fleming on the very first play of the game. He dropped it, but they didn't stop. They didn't say, well, that's it. That's what we get for throwing the ball on first down. Josh Simmons got a holding penalty on first down, which like to me was a reminder of like, oh yeah, no matter how bad your run game is, you're probably not going to get tackled for a loss of 10 on first down. If you throw the ball, you might get a holding penalty with this offensive line. So that is some of the risk in throwing on first down. But I like the first down balance. It wasn't perfect, but some of the stuff they hit was on first down. They weren't afraid of it. And I think that contributes to the feeling of the artistry, to feeling like things were connected a little bit, because we know for a fact from hearing from our tech subscribers, from hearing from listeners, that when Ohio State comes out and like runs the ball on first down, runs the ball on second down, and then throws incomplete on 3rd and 8, that's the version of Ohio State offense that fans hate the most. It did not feel at all like that today. And I think throwing the ball consistently on first down was part of that.
Yep. Do you want to throw to Ryan Day and we'll come back to that?
Oh, he's here?
Yeah, he's talking.
Hey, let's go to Ryan Day in West Lafayette.
Podcast. Brian, what went into the red zone package with Devin and got a score out of it, also turned it over? A little bit of a mixed bag. How do you evaluate it? Is that part of the plan moving forward?
Well, we started off with the weather, just looking, there was rain, there was wind, and certainly, didn't want to have the same situation that happened last year and wanted to make sure that, we had a good plan. And Devin is very explosive with his feet. He's strong, he's big, he's powerful, he's athletic. And we feel like he gives us a little bit of something there. He also throws the ball really well, but that's something that we've looked at, we've been working on a little bit, and we felt like this was the right time on the road to do that. I think it did give us something, equate numbers in the red zone, but we can't turn the ball over on the 1 yard line. I mean, that in a close game, that could have been the difference. And so, Devin's doing everything for the first time, just like Kyle was doing. So I'm glad we're able to do that in this moment here, get him going with that. It was good. He took a couple shots, so I'm sure he'll be sore, but I thought he threw a nice ball. They loaded up the box. We took a shot down there to Brandon. That was good to get under his belt, to make that throw. That was a big time throw. So, we'll keep looking at it, keep building his package, because we do feel like it gives us a little bit of a different changeup.
Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
I was comfortable wins, but doing a lot of sliding too. How prepared do you think you are for that?
Yeah, so I thought the first half, overall, we came out strong. Certainly, the fumble was something that we wish we had back. And then the defense, man. The ball goes down the 2 yard line. Just keep fighting, just keep playing, or the 1 yard line. Yeah. So great job. And then they get the penalty, and then we hang in there, and they missed the field goal. It was like, wow. And then it started to rain a little bit. And second half, we came out right down the field. And that was important. We wanted to come on the second half and play well in the first drive. And we did that. We came right down the field and scored. Then there was a kind of a point in there where, we just kind of, flopped around a little bit. I don't know if we took the foot off the accelerator a little bit, but certainly don't want to do that. But we have played in 4-quarter games this year. So I don't think that's an issue. There's been some times or one time, our starters hadn't been in 4 quarters, halfway through the season. That's not the case in this situation. So, we just got to keep pushing and keep growing, but I feel much better about the way that we ran the ball, although, we were down 3 running backs in the game. So that certainly did play, a factor in all of this, and then Evan went in the game. We took Marvin out, to Cade out in a little bit of that stretch there. So, it was, a job well done, but, like you said, there's always things we got to get better at. We're certainly a work in progress, and we're continuing to grow and build, and we have to be at our best football next Saturday.
Cameron T. Robinson, The Athletic.
Right, as you said, it's always needs to get better, but this was a defense that was ultimately pretty good coming
Yeah.
into the year. There's 6 games in, it seems like they just keep getting better and better. Is this the performance you thought you might get from them when you got preparing all year?
You're talking about our defense. Yeah, because I thought their defense was good too. I thought they do some really good things. I think, Coach, really has a good plan, and he does a nice job. He doesn't make it easy, but no, I think it starts with our leaders on defense. There's a lot of guys who have been in a lot of battles before, so they got to bring it, and they keep fighting, and they making teams get it all the way into the end zone. They're fighting down the 1-2 yard line and continue to fight like that. And that's a good sign. I know Coach Knowles and the defensive coaches are going to see things they want to get better at and keep growing, because they know the challenges are going to get bigger and bigger. So the issues are there. They have to be addressed on both sides of the ball, 3 phases, and we got to keep doing that. So we know we're near where we need to be, but that's part of growing. You want to be playing your best football at the end of the season. You find a way to go 1-0 on Saturday night, and that's the goal. So we know we got a big challenge ahead of us, and the preparation starts now.
Over to the left, Dylan Davis, Delaware Gazette.
We talked to Justin on ways that he talked about maybe simplifying things for his guys up front.
Well, yeah, and when you're down Trey, you're down Mayan, and Chip's your guy, and then all of a sudden you lose him in the game, it's like, okay, how are we going to run the ball here? So we got Dallin in there, and Dallin started to run well, but I thought, I have to look at the film, but it seemed like we were rocking off the ball pretty good, even though it was a pretty loaded box at times again, and then it started to rain, and we started to get that, and then there was like 2 extra guys, they were bringing the safety down real low, and so it forced us to kind of push the ball down the field on a couple throws, which is fine, but yeah, and then Evan went in the game. Xavier took a couple handoffs too, coming out of the as a receiver that can give us a little something, but we certainly didn't have 3 of our running backs, and that makes a big difference. So to be able to run the way we did without having 3 of our guys was a good sign. So we got to get healthy this week.
Pat Murphy, 24/7 Sports.
Ryan, you mentioned running backs. Dallin's done this a handful of times.
Yeah.
Giving you guys stuff. What makes him capable of, at a moment's notice, being ready to step in a game?
Yeah, I think he's got really good feet. I think he, when the ball's in his hands, that's when he's at his best. And he's got good vision, good quickness, and but I think to your point, it shows his mental preparation because he hasn't played a bunch this year, and so to be able to go do that is says a lot about his preparation. And the things that we did today are things that are day one installation kind of plays. We had the stretch play going, we had the counter play going, and a few other things, a couple tosses, but he put it on the field. He took care of the ball. That's the number one thing. Certainly some things in protection that we need to get better at, but ran the ball hard, and it was good to see him step up in this moment on the road.
That's the bonus of him not playing the previous 4 games too, right? You have some games to burn there in case.
Well, that was it. Just in case something like this happened, we say a bomb goes off. A bomb was going off today when we lost Chip, and so hope to get everybody back for next week. But that's why we played it out like that.
Spencer Holbrook, Letterman Row.
I don't know offensive line is something you guys have to watch later to make sure that
Yes.
you feel like that's a step forward.
Boy, I hope so. I think they came off the field with a bunch of energy and finished off some drives, and we ran the ball harder. We got downhill. We created some play action passes where guys were open down the field. I mean, you felt. I felt on the sideline like we were knocking people off the ball at times. I felt like our running backs were running hard. Now, whether that shows up on film, I got to go take a look at it. But like you said, you saw a good demeanor out there.
Over to the left.
You talked about Sober being an offensive weapon earlier this week, and he goes out and scores 2 touchdowns for you guys. How does a guy like that really help to secure?
Well, he does a lot for us. I've said it before. He does a lot of the dirty work for us, in the run game, and then that creates play action passes. And but the catch he had in the one-on-one situation on, I don't know if it was a 3rd down or a 2nd and long, it was a heck of a throw and catch. Then he did a nice job, kind of, snatching the ball quickly on the touchdown pass. The ball was kind of thrown a little bit outside of his frame, and he snatched it hard with his hands. And then the last one, that was a play action off of a counter play that, when you're running hard and the defense is showing up on the line of scrimmage, you can get open down the field if you're blocking inside and doing all the dirty work. And that's really him. He's a great captain, and he's a weapon for us both in the run game and in the pass game.
And final question, Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch.
Right, the way Dallin ran today, the way injuries have kind of impacted the running back, and you mentioned obviously that if you're looking at Dallin because he got a redshirt.
Yeah.
Your eligibility. You look at that, it was just sort of his future now. Yeah,
I think we got to look at and just see, what that room's looking like, and we'll kind of play it week to week. We didn't know how the season was going to play out, but we wanted to at least have the choice to be able to save his red shirt if possible. But, we'll sit down and talk if it's something that, we got to go play and do what's best for the team, and there's opportunities to go play, then we'll go from there.
Great. Coach, thank you very much.
Yep, thanks.
Coach, you might be able to get.
All right. So thanks to Berm for setting that up for us to be able to join Ryan Day out there. My fault we got out there a little bit late. He did say off the bat, no injury updates on Emeka Egbuka, who did not make the trip, on Trevion Henderson, who warmed up, but then for the second part of warmups came out, was not in uniform, was clearly out. He was listed as questionable on the injury report and then did not play. No update on Denzel Burke, who went out during the game, did go in the injury 10. If Ryan Day has no update, we don't have any update on that, Landis, right?
No, and Austin and Berm are there. Austin was texting about it as it was happening, and we don't really have anything other than he went to the locker room, and
okay.
We'll go from there.
So let's talk about, we're talking about the run game. And Ryan Day was talking about that. Doesn't Dallin Hayden have to play now? Is the redshirt talk over?
Yeah, I think so. I think regardless of how the injury situation shakes out, right? And this was true last year, which makes the redshirt conversation all the more frustrating. Like I regret a little bit, like not pushing back on Tuesday when I asked Ryan Day, like, what's up with Dallin Hayden? They said, like, we're going to redshirt him. Like, I should have said, like, why? And I didn't.
Yeah.
I just sort of like let the answer sit there. So I apologize for not pushing back on that.
Oh, yeah, well, you're the one who brought up the whole conversation. You're the one.
No, but there was more. There was more to get into there, and you know that's what we're there for. And I didn't.
I'm not going to sit here, Landis, and let you talk yourself down.
That's okay. He has the best vision of anyone in the room. That was clear last year. It was clear in this game, right? And it's not like, does he have some limitations compared to the other guys? Sure. Like he's not as powerful probably as Chip and Mayan. He's not as fast in a straight line as Travion. He gets to the hole quicker than all of them. And I think that is what is most important when Ohio State is looking to run the football. So yes, I think he needs to play and needs to be a part of the plan moving forward.
And it's odd because I think that's the number one thing that frustrates Ryan Day is when a back doesn't see the hole.
Mm-hmm.
When it feels like we schemed it up, we blocked it up, and you didn't hit it. Xavier Johnson is a guy who kind of hits the hole pretty well at times, except he's a receiver. So, like, that's not a long-term answer. You can play Xavier Johnson anywhere, and he'd go in there and play good football. I do think it makes sense, as we just heard from Ryan Day in the postgame. They're going to evaluate it. I can't imagine that evaluation isn't. I hope Ryan Day and Tony Alford look at each other and say, okay, on the count of three, are we going to play Dallin or not? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Yes. And they say it simultaneously. But if it's not that, then I think it's the head coach. Not that we're suggesting Tony Alford's the holdout here. I think Ryan Day is like, we got to play that guy. So I think it's over. I don't know what it means going forward. But are we saying that even in a world where Travion Henderson, Mayan Williams, and Chip Trainum are healthy, we think Dallin Hayden should be part of the game plan next week against Penn State?
Yes, I'm saying that. Now, what does that look? I'm not. I still think Travion needs to be part of it. He's too much. He's too explosive to not be part of it if he's healthy. And like we'll see what's up with Chip. Chip took a pretty nasty hit there, so we'll see what's up with him. I think you want that power element too, right? But we've had this conversation like, how many can you play? What's realistic? And we've sort of always said like, well, 3 seems realistic. So why can't your 3 be Dallin, Trey, and whichever of the 2 of Mayan and Chip is most healthiest?
Yeah, I think that sounds right to me. I think he's got to be part of it. There are just going to be times when, as you said, vision's going to be the number one thing you need. So 11 carries, 76 yards, a touchdown, 6.9 yards per attempt. And I did not have time to look it up this week. I'm going to look it up this weekend. Last 20 years, skill players at Ohio State who really made a huge impact in year 5. That the redshirt created an opportunity for the program and the player to thrive, and it was way worth it. It's not like popping to mind. So I think the whole thing to me is a crazy conversation. I'm sure it's influenced by the fact that they did not get a back. They don't have a running back recruit in the current freshman class. They have 3 in the next class. But if you're trying to think down the line, okay, well, if Travion and Chip and Mayan are all gone after this year, we saw a little bit of Evan prior today. He looked a little rusty. If you think maybe Dallin is like our top guy in 24 and 25, that's fine. I still don't know why you have to worry about whether he's here or not in 2026. So
I do, just like quickly off the top of my head, I think the answer to your question might be Paris Campbell, Terry McLaurin, KJ Hill.
Oh, well, I mean, that's good. That's why I'm going to look it up.
I think I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Paris and Terry were 14 recruits who were their best in the 18 season, and KJ was a 15 recruit who set the world on fire in 18 and 19.
Well, I'm glad that you said that to me instead of Ryan Day. Me asking him in the news conference, Ryan, are there even been any 5th-year skill guys? Yeah, Doug. So you're my Ryan Day, Bill Landis. So I thought that was a good mix with the run game today, but it's also almost not having a lead back forces them to be more creative because they're getting a little counter stuff with Xavier Johnson. They're running some they didn't have a choice but to be creative. So I almost think maybe they're in a world where the more guys you have to throw in the mix. They said they were like kind of saving Dallin Hayden, like in case a bomb goes off. It's like, all right, your top 2 guys are out. Another one gets hurt. That's what this was. But I almost think, I think they might have found some stuff long-term personnel and scheme because they had to on a day like this.
I agree with you, but I also felt that at points last year too. And it was like when it was time to give Dallin Hayden the ball against Michigan and Georgia, they didn't. So we'll see.
All right, so let's just talk about I'm pretty much at this was maybe close to exactly what you wanted going into the Penn State game. I asked our tech subscribers rate the performance on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is excellent, 1 is bad. The average is 7.7. Landis, not a lot of 10s, but everybody's like a 6, 7, 8, 9. I think I'm probably, like, given circumstances, no Emeka, no Travion, no Mayan, Rainey. I think I'm pretty close to a 9 on that was what you wanted to see. What did you think?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd be a 9. I think I'd be a comfortable 8 though. Like I wanted to see them run the football the way they did, especially in the first half. I'm not so much on like, oh, they didn't run it real well in the second half. I think some of what Ryan Day said there was true. Purdue just started putting like extra guys down there because the weather was going to make it more difficult to throw. I think they kind of like took Dallin out of the game in the second half too. Like Evan Pryor had a bad drive. I thought took a really bad tackle for loss where he just ran a play out to the sideline when he should have just tried to get north. And took a few yards behind the line of scrimmage. So I thought that was good. The drops are weird. Like they had 5 drops by my count in this game, which is like, how often is that going to happen? Probably not very often, which is why it seems so odd to see it happen today.
I think rain is some part of that.
Yeah,
not the entire answer.
Not early.
Some.
Not early.
No,
like
not
it wasn't raining it wasn't really raining in the first half. But that's not something like I worry about long term either. And I actually did so like the first play of the game is a drop from Julian Fleming. The first play of the second half is the exact same concept to Julian Fleming, and he caught it. So like they went back to him like, "Can you show us you can do this?" And he showed him how to do it. So I'm not worried about it, but that keeps it from being like, a banner day on offense for me. I thought Kyle McCord was fine. I thought the defense was great. To like bow up in the red zone and then the low red zone the way they did, I thought was really good to see. And like they are, to me, like a defense that just doesn't look like it flinches. Like they give up some stuff for sure, but when I think a lot of defenses that give up stuff like that, once it gets down into the scoring area, they sort of fold or like wilt and get frustrated by things. And Ohio State's defense seems like it does a pretty good job of like bouncing back from when teams do hit a play or two on them.
So I want to save the defensive conversation because there's a particular thing I want to talk about as we adapt to this version of the Ohio State defense. We're going to talk about Peacock too, because they were peacocking. It's a beautiful bird. I don't want to besmirch a beautiful bird, but we're going to talk about that. I want to talk about Kyle McCord. I want to talk about the pass game, specifically like Marvin again on a day without Emeka being there. But let's talk about the Devin Brown package. I think we have to. I think we have to go to that because did you predict it? Did you predict this? What's happening? You didn't predict it in my presence.
No. So here's what happened on Wednesday night. Austin and I were standing around, and he'll have to back me up on this, right? Because it was only he and I who can say it happened because I wasn't talking to anybody else. And the quarterbacks are like running some sprints. And I turned to him and I said, how close are we, do you think, to the Devin Brown red zone package? And he said something like, oh, I don't think we're there. And I said, I don't think we're there yet either, but I think we're like one more bad red zone game away from seeing it. But I was wrong. They were ready to do it now.
You're supposed to text that stuff. The texts are like a funnel into your brain. Or at least tell me. Then I could have been like, oh man, that's brilliant analysis. You're on it.
Oh, it was pure. Well, yeah, I guess it was.
Boom.
It was more. It was intuition, I suppose. I don't know.
Why? Why? So Ryan Day said they'd been working on this.
Mm-hmm.
He said they were kind of like trying to find the time to bring it out. Why do you think today was the day?
Because they were bad in the red zone last week. They got to finish. They have to finish drives with touchdowns. They've had too many drives stall out inside the 20 and way too many, I think, stall out inside the 5 where these quarterback runs help you the most. I think there's a worthwhile conversation, right, about whether or not it's a good way of doing business. We've seen them try to do this before. It hasn't really worked. Other teams do it, and it does work. So it's not an inherently flawed idea. But it's interesting that they've arrived at this point. I thought it looked pretty. Like I know that Devin Brown fumbled the ball going over the goal line, but like he should have scored. He got there, which means like it worked the 2 times they tried to do it. So it's I think if anything, it's good to like have in your bag. It's good to throw out there as a change up. Is it I guess I don't know if it falls into the category of like, we're doing this now, or hey, Penn State, look at this thing over here. You got to prepare for this now next week.
So that was how I phrased it to our tech subscribers. What do you think of the Devin Brown red zone package? One option was not a fan, don't rely on it. Another was nice to put on film for Penn State, but use it sparingly. And then I love it. I hope they continue it. It's great. What would you have voted for, Landis?
I probably would have voted for the middle one there, the show at the Penn State.
Put it on film for Penn State. What do you think won from the texters?
Love it.
Now, the put it on film for Penn State, overwhelming, 68%.
Okay.
Nice to put on film for Penn State, but more love it than hate it. 23% love it, hope they continue it. Only 9% not a fan, don't rely on it. The idea of, do they need a quarterback run threat in the red zone, right? That idea. I think that's hard to dispute. We've had too many coaches over the years talk about it's like you're putting up 8 guys at the goal line if you're trying to throw it there. There's always an extra guy in the hole if you try to run it there. If it's not a dominant offensive line, and Ryan Day, you guys heard in the postgame, was saying he thought they did a better job moving the line of scrimmage today, and they did. But like there's a Purdue caveat in there for sure. Great, great for Ohio State to have that. I don't think anyone's saying like, all right, offensive line is fixed. They're going to dominate people. So the quarterback run threat, I get. Why can't it be Kyle?
Yeah.
Like, is Devin Brown this much better situated and suited to run zone read inside the 10? He's much better than Kyle McCord?
He's bigger than Kyle McCord, which I think maybe is part of the conversation. Yeah, I don't know. Like Kyle pulled the ball on that counter read, and I thought looked pretty comfortable doing it. He converted the quarterback sneak, and like I know he had that misread in the Indiana game where they called the QB draw and they like ran the wrong way and they didn't score. I think Kyle can do it.
I think so too. I at least would be curious to see in more game situations.
Yeah, I mean, so would I, because the thing with Devin Brown is like I know he threw a touchdown pass to Brandon Innes, but like I've found Devin Brown's passing to be very underwhelming every time he's been in there. And I don't think they're going to put him in the game to throw the ball because like that throw to G. Scott was terrible. So you're telegraphing it then. So like why not maintain the element of surprise with the quarterback who I don't know. Maybe Devin Brown is better at running it, but I don't think it's a tremendous gap. Like it's not JT Barrett and Cardell Jones we're talking about here. I think they're more or less similar.
And it's not Tate Martell and Dwayne Haskins, because that's the last time we saw it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we definitely in 2015 we saw everything. But as they were trying to figure it out, the biggest issue with Cardale as a starter was they couldn't do anything in the red zone. They made JT the red zone quarterback. That worked great because JT was born to do that. And they eventually just got to JT entirely. This is not that. This is much closer to Dwayne Haskins and Tate Martell. But I think Devin Brown is less Tate Martelli than Tate Martell, and Kyle McCord is less Dwayne Haskins than Dwayne Haskins. That Dwayne was just not going to be an effective runner. I think Kyle could be. And Tate was made to scoot, and I don't think Devin's quite that. So I think the gap between Dwayne and Tate was, in this regard, was substantially bigger than the gap between Kyle and Devin.
Yeah, I mean,
in this regard.
Yeah, Tate was like, by the way, the Peacock guy called Carnell Tate Martell Tate when he first.
I missed it. You said that in Slack, and then I didn't hear it because I'm trying to fast forward and rewind through Peacock commercials. And I thought, no, that's a Slack joke.
No, he said it. Yeah.
He called, say it again. Okay, so there was a player for Ohio State named Tate Martell, and now there's one named Carnell Tate, and he called who what?
Carnell runs onto the field like early in the game, and the announcer says Martell Tate into the game.
Martell Tate.
Yeah.
I would much rather him call him either Tate or Carnell Martell. Either of those are better, right, than what he called him. He also called him Jamie Eichenberg at one point.
Yeah.
Wasn't great.
No.
So what I didn't like, I don't think it should be, hey, they're inside the 7. We're not going to see Kyle again until they're either in the red zone or kicking in the end zone or kicking a field goal. Because the first time they brought him in, like that's what it was, right? Devin ran. Devin handed off to Chip. Devin ran, I think, were the three
That's right.
plays. And Kyle was just standing there. Then they had a series again where, like, they brought in Devin. He ran. It didn't work. Then they brought Kyle back in. And so I like it, I think, for a play. I don't like it as a permanent, this is what we do 85% of the time inside the 5. I would rather have it be it's first and goal from the 5. Kyle's in. Okay, they hand it off. Now it's second and goal from the 3. Here comes Devin. Oh, now we didn't get it. Now it's third and goal from the 1. It's back to Kyle again. That, I think, can be effective because the defense is off balance. Just like it's Devin time, I don't know about.
So Devin came in and ran it, handed it off, ran it, scored a touchdown. Second time, ran it again, fumbled going over the goal line. Third time they brought him in, ran like a guy who was terrified of fumbling the ball again. Like,
Yes.
put both arms around the ball basically from the second he caught the snap and got arm tackled at the line of scrimmage because he was not in a position to run through any tackles or do much of anything because he was scared of fumbling the ball. So they took him out and put Kyle back in. Yeah, I think there's a place for it. I agree with you. I think there's a place for it. I don't know that it should be an automatic. I think it's a nice wrinkle. It's good. It's good to have. And Devin probably is fairly, whether it's a willingness to or physical capability, more of a battering ram than I think Kyle is or perhaps wants to be. And also more than Ryan Day wants Kyle to be because Kyle's a starting quarterback. But they need to figure out a better plan when Kyle's in there too, because like they tried the sprint out, it didn't work. They tried to throwback play again, it didn't work. Like they don't have many ideas when the ball gets down inside the 5. And granted, it's hard to score touchdowns down there. So this is a simplified way, I guess, of getting it over the goal line. It's just let Devin go in there and run over somebody.
Yeah. And if you're going to be tricky, right, they put Devin out and then had Devin throw a pass to G. Scott. I'd rather be tricky by having Kyle in and have Kyle run.
Mm-hmm.
But Ryan Day didn't exactly say this, but as this quarterback battle was happening in the preseason, you could sort of feel there was something of, hey, the good thing about having 2 quarterbacks is one of them can get hurt, which he didn't say, but there was like it's not the Justin Fields 2019 where if your starting quarterback gets hurt, like you're done. And so I think that he was saying it in terms of like maybe you can free up some quarterback run game because of that. But I guess if he is going to do that, you'd still rather do it with the number 2 guy than the number 1 guy. So if somebody does get hurt, it's not the number 1 guy getting hurt. And I'm joking, but like you could sort of see what he was saying, that's one of the reasons it's good to have 2 quarterbacks because then you can run it with the QB more.
Yeah. But then he also did the tush push with Kyle.
Oh, Kyle Pyle.
So
Kyle Pyle. See, that we predicted, that we were on, and we told the people about. We did a whole 90-minute podcast about the Kyle Pyle. Caden Curry. We were talking about Chip pushing Kyle. Caden Curry. What a tush pusher that guy is. So good at it. Motion Caden Curry. Wham. He was ready for it.
He was good.
Wasn't it good? It was
great
good.
Form. Yeah, great form.
Great tush push.
Yeah.
That's a part of the pack. They'll tush push against Penn State, yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so too. We didn't do this when we were doing the specific run game conversation. I don't want to forget it. How are you feeling about the Ohio State run game right now after today's game? 10 is excellent. 1 is bad. Again, it's the 1 to 10 rating scale. A 5.98 for the texters. So Landis, that's kind of like, and we talk about the texters, not because we're trying to get you to join the text, because they're the educated, dedicated, loyal Ohio State fans who represent all of you watching and listening right now. What do you guys think? It's our way to find out. They're not over the top, right? They're not solved, but actually where the run game has been, 6 probably is pretty good. If we would ask the same question, and the other game, it might have been a 3.
If we would have asked last week, it would have been pretty close to 0, I think. 5-ish, I think, is the right reaction to this game because I'm imagining everyone would have been much lower than that coming off of last week.
Were you surprised that Trey didn't play? Because Ryan Day on Tuesday said something to the effect of Travion Henderson's going to play, right? That's not overstating that, was it? That's where we were.
No, and I thought like post game after Maryland, he was like, yeah, we didn't want to push it with him this week, but like he's going to play next week.
Yeah. Okay. So just being careful, super duper, duper, duper careful.
I'm willing to say yes, because he traveled. Emeka didn't travel. I don't think Mayan Williams traveled. So like Travion went there, warmed up, and then when it was time to come out for final warm-ups, he was in t-shirt and shorts. So like they gave it a go. I'm sure they asked him like pregame, like, how do you feel, kind of stuff. But I also think probably in the back of their mind, they knew like they could get by without him in this game.
I also kind of think I don't want to put a label on a person, but I'll put a label on the room. I thought last year was sort of a one-off. What a crazy injury year for the running back room. Oh, wait till they get back to normal this year. It feels like we're back. I can't believe it, but maybe we should believe it. But it feels like we're back to that, which is just accentuating why D Hayden can't redshirt. Because, all right, last year the run game wasn't great because they were so injured at running back. Okay, this year the run game wasn't great because the offensive line wasn't blocking it up correctly. Now also the room is hurt. So do you expect it's going to be an all hands on deck situation beyond our preferences for Dallin? Just on the reality, when you have 2 seasons like this for Travion and Mayan, not knowing week to week who's going to play, maybe one can, maybe one can't, I think everybody should be buckled in for that now, right?
Yeah, I would be, because it's been weird before this. Like Mayan has had like a limited workload, like no workload. Wasn't there today, so like we don't know what's up with him. And like we don't know what the nature of Travion's injury is, other than like he picked something up in the Notre Dame game. It wasn't during the practice week, is what we were told about it, the off week practice. So, yeah, I don't know if it's quite as serious for him as it was last year. I don't think it is. I don't have any reason to believe that, but yeah, it's a room that is a little injury prone.
All right, let's talk about the defense, because I think people want us to do that because they are playing just really well. And there was a comment made on the Peacock halftime show, I think. We'll talk about that bird later. That like the Ohio State defense didn't come out and wasn't playing great at the beginning. I thought the first drive was exactly the Ohio State defense this year, because the Buckeyes gave up 3 first downs on that first drive and no points. And you could see Purdue ran a little rollout with Hudson Card where you could see. Now, of course, we didn't have the camera angle, because I don't know if Peacock only had 1 camera there or what. Maybe they had to put they have 73 cameras at USC Notre Dame tonight, and they let one guy drive down to Westlawn. Can we spare the 73rd camera? Maybe we'll just do a radio broadcast of Ohio State Purdue. No, we can get one. And then the whole broadcast is like the guy who's the Notre Dame tight end is like, oh, I wish I was at the Notre Dame game. It's like, you're being paid to do this game. I know you went to Notre Dame, but can we not talk about that the whole game? We're not talking about Peacock yet. They gave up 3 first downs, no points. I thought that was them to a T. Hudson Card, they designed that play to take a deep shot. They obviously took it away. He checked it down. I think they got a first down on the play, but it's not what they wanted to do. And then you make that offense 3 first downs wasn't good enough. And then they got 1 third down stop, and it led to a long field goal that they missed. And I was like, that's not bad defense. That is the Ohio State defense, especially early on. I don't know if Purdue scripts, but a lot of offenses, they come out with their best stuff right away. And you see teams march down the field all the time and usually march and score. They marched. That was their best stuff. They got 3 first downs and no points. That's good defense, not bad defense. I thought it was odd to imply anything otherwise. And then the rest of the game, they let it rip a little bit more.
Yeah, it was so like they moved it a little bit, and then like they tried a second down screen pass, got totally blown up by Mike Hall and JT Tuimoloau. The third down, they tried to throw to the tight end against Steele Chambers, and it was like a back shoulder throw. Like Steele I thought had good coverage on it. Like that was it. Like they moved the ball, they got those 3 first downs. They got 18 yards on their next 18 plays. And got 1 first down over that stretch until the end of the first half, when they moved it again and threatened to score, but they couldn't get that field goal, or couldn't score from the 1 yard line, whatever it was that happened there. But yeah, no, I didn't think that was bad defense either. I think typically offenses have the upper hand when they come out and run those script plays, and they got them with misdirection a couple of times, but I thought Ohio State adjusted well and shut it down like it normally does.
I thought this was another example of an Ohio State defense. You give up only 7 points. You have 3 sacks. You only allow 134 passing yards, 3 of 17 on third down. Is what you hold Purdue to. And I think maybe all 3 conversions were on the first drive. I don't know.
They converted. No,
they might have been converting before they got to third down on the first drive, actually. But
yeah, so they got the 3 on the first drive, and then I think went 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, and then converted 1, but then that turned into nothing.
Yeah,
and then they had the drive at the end of the first half.
And you get a little lucky. Great field goal defense. The guy misses 3. But another example of the DBs getting hands on passes, right? And being right there, like being right there and just nothing easy. And Purdue had enough in the pass game that I thought that was instructive, right? I actually think Deion Burks and Sheffield, a couple of those guys, I actually think Purdue might offer more in the pass game than Penn State does. Is that possible?
I think that Purdue's receiver room, I don't know if they're more talented, but I think they're playing better than Penn State's receivers are this year. Yeah.
So like if like that example, that even the stuff Purdue was getting was difficult. And I thought that was just like what this defense has come to exemplify. And then they did get after it. They were averaging like 4.5 tackles for loss per game, like 4.6, I think, coming in. They had 9 tackles for loss in this game, including 3 sacks. Did you think they let it rip a little more getting after it? Or was this just a function? Purdue was without its starting right tackle, then its starting right guard went out during the game. This is an overwhelmed offensive line. Why did you think Ohio State was creating more havoc?
I think because of that, I think it's. I mean, if we're going to be fair, I think a large part of that is the personnel for Purdue. They gave up 6 sacks last week to Iowa, 12 tackles for loss. Like they're going through some stuff up front, but you want to see Ohio State take advantage of that too, right? And I know they only had 2 sacks. I thought Hudson Card maybe like slipped away from another 1 or 2. I did feel like he was bothered all game. Like I think he was throwing the ball off time or out of sync with his receivers for almost the entire game, which is a byproduct of the defensive line getting after him. So. I thought Jim Knowles. I'm curious to look now when we get the PFF stuff, like how often they blitz, because I thought he was blitzing a little more early on because I'm assuming he just figured there's no way Purdue can block this, and they couldn't. Like I think that blew up a lot of plays too. So they overwhelmed an offensive line that I think had no shot at blocking them, which was good to see. And
I thought for the Penn State game, put that on film. Let's come out and blitz more than we have all year, planted in their heads. You and I have really been in on that Jim Knowles is you asked a great question this week of Jim Knowles because I was right there with you. You basically said, like, do you think opponents are maybe still expecting you to blitz more because you had that reputation before? And what was his answer to you?
He said, "What do you mean? Like they don't watch film? They just sit in the meeting room and say, 'Oh, Knowles, all he does is blitz all the time.'" And I was like, "Yeah."
Because like I know you watch the film, but you still I think the idea is that you don't completely believe what the film is telling you because you think there's a long con there. You think that he's slow playing you. I do think it's not front of mind because you've got to go by what you see. I think it's in the back of their heads.
Yeah.
So then if you blitz a little bit more today going into Penn State, now you put it a little bit more back in the front of their mind when Mike Yurcich and the Penn State offense has to start thinking about that this week.
Yeah, I think so. Like, and especially Drew Aller. Like you want a quarterback who's making his 7th career start.
Yeah,
who has not played a defense like the one he's going to see next week. You want him, expecting everything you could possibly throw at him. So
yeah,
I think it's good.
I think it was good. All right, so we have our tech subscribers. We have our guy Mike Yorstowski, our producer, who joined us last week. He makes all of us better. He makes this show better. Mike, come on here and join us. And why don't you start off with our first texter question of the postgame show?
Yeah, good afternoon, guys. Shane would like to know, why do you think Ryan Day showed the Devon Brown red zone package? Seems like it would have been better to catch Penn State off guard with next week.
I'd rather show it now and use it less next week than spring the surprise next week. I'd rather give them something extra to think about. And also, we saw it with the fumble. I wouldn't want to try it for the first time against a defense that good.
Yeah, I think you don't want to. There's a balance there, right? And I said this earlier in the week. Like I think it's Ryan Day's MO to show some different stuff the week before he plays a big game and then not do it so much in the big game. But also too, it's like you're putting Devin Brown in a big spot, and like the fumble didn't matter in this game, but a fumble on the goal line probably does matter against Penn State. So you don't want to, I think, exacerbate whatever nerves Devin Brown might be feeling doing something for the first time by doing it when you're playing in a top 5 game.
I mean, Ryan talked about that in the post game. Like he said, in a close game, that'll cost you the game. And so I was almost prepared for him to be like, well, that's it. And not like the fact that at least they came back and ran it again, I think emphasized that this was for Penn State. This was to give them something else to worry about. And now you build off that, because this is not Ted Ginn Jr. lining up as a tight end. This is not Michigan handing the ball to its linebacker, fullback, running back last year, and then having him throw. This is not a trick play. This is a way of attacking that you want to use. And that's, I think, best done by planting the seed and then making them work on something you don't use that much, or now building off that package and giving them something from that you didn't show in that package this week.
Yeah. I mean, Penn State was going to spend no time working on quarterback run game prior to today. And now, will they spend a lot of time on it? No, but they'll spend some time on it, which is some time now they can't spend working on something else that you do.
Yeah. And then I do think it could be like if you think Penn State's going to expect that only when Devin Brown comes in the game, maybe they let their guard down when Kyle's in, and then you run that play.
Yeah.
You run zone read with Kyle, because now you've planted the seed that we only do that with Devin. So I think I think you make a good point about Ryan Day doing it the week before.
I did just on the point, and I don't know. Sometimes I think we give coaches too much credit for being like quote unquote creative, because it's funny, like we say, oh, they had a creative run game, and Ryan Day's like, we ran like 3 plays at our first day install plays. It's like, yeah, but it was diverse, so it looked creative. The plays with Devon Brown, it was like the offensive line like wedge blocked kind of. It was like the way you block on a quarterback sneak almost, where you're like trying to get a yard, and he like faked the zone read and then just sort of like popped out to the outside when the defense all like converged to the middle of the field. Like that was by design, I think. And that was the first run that he had, and the touchdown run that he had, it did the same thing. So like, I thought that was a nice little wrinkle to a quarterback run package.
All right, Mike, another question from our texters.
Yeah, this one also comes from Shane. This is the same guy, but I thought this was a really interesting question. We've talked about the defense and the linebackers a lot on previous shows. He would like to know, does James Laurinaitis control the rotation of linebackers during the game? Or do you think he has any insight into that? I know we've talked about the linebackers, Steel Chambers getting benched a couple times, coming in and out.
So Knowles is up in the box. Laurinaitis is on the field. My guess is that Laurinaitis is coaching up the linebackers during the game, because like that's why you do that, right? Knowles is up there worried about what he's going to call on 2nd and 8 and when he's going to blitz. So my guess is yes. But also Jim Knowles, a lot of time what happens is, and coaches say this all the time, you make the plan during the week. And then actually what happens on Saturday is like, well, who's making the decisions? Well, as a group, we came to a decision. And as a group, we came to a decision of Cody's going to play more. James, but I want Cody. If Knowles says, I want Cody playing 40% of the snaps. James, you figure it out, but that's a goal this week, right? I would imagine it's something like that. It's not exactly, even if Laurinaitis is controlling it, it's not James Laurinaitis saying like, oh, Steel Chambers blew a coverage, you're benched. Like, I don't think it's that.
It's an interesting question that we should probably get an answer to, and we can get an answer to, I think, when we talk to Jim Knowles this week. My assumption would be that it is not James Laurinaitis making the call. Like it's Jim Knowles up in the box, because I don't do a lot of switching in between series. I feel like it's like Steele had a blunder on the series, Cody's going to the next one. So that's probably just Jim Knowles up in the box radioing down and saying, hey, we want Cody in there this time. So, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's like James Laurinaitis is the one who's on the sideline, and the coaches on the sidelines are the ones who are handling the personnel for their respective position groups. And Jim Knowles and Corey Dennis and Keenan Bailey are the only 3 position coaches that aren't on the field, right? So maybe James Laurinaitis is doing that for him. I don't know. We'll get you an answer. And
I'm sure it's not like one guy is doing something that the other guy doesn't know about or vehemently disagrees with.
Right.
So what are we to make of at this point? That there's a lot of people who want CJ Hicks to play, probably including CJ Hicks. And we thought maybe CJ Hicks would be the guy that could spell Steel Chambers, and maybe Cody Simon was a little more of like Tommy Eichenberg's backup. And are we getting closer to a Cody Simon, Steel Chambers timeshare at will linebacker? And are we surprised by that? And are we surprised that if they are going to share that position, it doesn't include CJ Hicks?
I think we're there. I don't know that we're getting closer to it. I think we have arrived. but yeah, I would not have guessed that coming into the season. I'm still waiting for CJ Hicks to be unleashed, as Jim Knowles said when we talked to him way back in May, and he got us all excited about that. I would have guessed that Cody was the backup Mike and CJ was the backup Will, but it actually seems like Cody is the backup at both spots, because later in the game when Tommy came out, it was Cody and Steele playing together. But I do think we're at I don't know if it's even rotation with Cody and Steele, but I think we're at a timeshare at the Will linebacker spot.
And we have to, I mean, Cody Simon used to be a starter until Tommy Eichenberg took his job. So, I mean, like Cody Simon in some ways is just as experienced as Steele Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg are. All right, Mike, what else?
Yeah, guys, this next question I'm kind of going to lump in. Everyone's been asking about Devin Hayden. Craig would like to know, why would they still consider a redshirt for him after this year, or after this week, excuse me? It seems like he has the best vision on the team, and we saw some of that last season. So why don't the coaches see that he needs to play?
I think they do now.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, we're with you, Craig, on the question. Like we talked about it earlier in the show, but it's obvious. We all knew it, right? Because we watched the games last year, and we got to see it again today against Purdue. He should not redshirt. He should be a part of the plan. We'll see if the coaches agree.
I mean, there's only so many reps to go around in practice. Like you've got to play Trey and Chip and Mayan are just like big physical dudes to rely on. And so I understand sort of generally the idea of how Devin Hayden might have fallen through the cracks. I almost would feel better if not playing Devin Hayden was a fall through the cracks thing rather than a plan. It's like, oh, you know what? We forgot how good he was. He didn't get enough reps in practice. He was kind of fourth on the depth chart, rather than being like, oh, no. We had a meeting about it. We're going to redshirt him. Like, for real? So I think we're all there. And if you thought Landis was asking about it last week, wait till now. He's going to demand, how dare you, sir? How dare you consider a red shirt any longer for Devin Hayden?
Well, I'm going to ask it the way you framed it. Like, what is it that you envision happening in 2026 that makes it worth redshirting Devin Hayden this season?
And even if what you envision is a 2,000-yard season, why is that more important than what's staring you in the face right now, which is trying to win a national championship with the current status of the running back room?
Right.
All right, Mike, what else?
All right, guys. Yeah, next one will come from Brad. Brad says, seems like Marvin missed some catches this year that he would have made last year. Hate nitpicking the guy. Obviously, he puts in the work. Do you guys think it is ball placement from McCord, though? Seems like Kyle throws off his back foot often.
What do you think, Landis?
He was throwing off his back foot a lot today, actually. I noted that as well.
It almost felt like it was a plan.
Right.
Like, hey, this is a back foot throw. I don't know.
Maybe he anticipated a lot of pressure. Like Purdue was blitzing, I think, a lot early before Ohio State got up big. So I think there was some anticipation of that. Part of it, I think, is ball placement, right? Like CJ Stroud is the ball placement specialist. He never really missed a target. So maybe there's some of that, but I don't think that any of the drops today from Marvin, I think, are excused by ball placement, even if they're slightly off target. Like the one in the end zone hit his hands. The 1/3 down in the second half, went through his hands. So I still put that on the receiver, even if the throw's not perfect, especially a receiver who we're all to believe is, the best in the country. I think he's going to catch those.
I do think it's odd. It's like, I think it takes a while to get used to a quarterback, except he knows Kyle already. I can remember when the Buckeyes went from Dwayne Haskins to Justin Fields, like the conversation just around catchable passes and that kind of thing. And, or maybe it was JT to Dwayne. There was definitely conversations about hey, this guy, some guys just really throw a catchable ball, and some guys have a great arm, but it's not as catchable. They don't vary the speed. They don't, it's placement also and sort of how you throw it. So I think we can forget this. Marv's still like a human man and kind of like a young man.
Mm-hmm.
And he has been told that he's the best receiver in college football. He's had that. He's earned it. He's earned that label. But just because your dad's in the Hall of Fame and just because you catch 300 passes after practice every day, and just because you are eminently skilled and you had a huge season last year, doesn't mean it's not hard to carry that. And everything he did last year was kind of surprising because he thought he was going to be the number 2 receiver on the team. And then Jackson got hurt in the first game, and then away he went. And he's had an entire offseason of you're the best, you're the best, you're the best. So I'm not saying he got a big head. I'm not saying he's not working hard enough. I'm just saying sometimes that's hard.
Mhm.
And even when you are incredibly disciplined and hardworking and smart and dedicated, it's still hard. So I'll leave a little bit to that, and I'll leave a little bit to the rain. And I do think there is mental energy expended when you're on the field and trying to figure out, okay, is the safety over me now? Am I about to beat double coverage? Like the whole defense is geared to stop you. And so sometimes even when you're open, you still have exerted the mental energy of like trying to think 30 different things. And then, oh, by the way, here's the last part of the equation is catch the ball. And it doesn't happen. So 6 receptions, 105 yards, a touchdown, 7.5 yards per reception, has 100 receiving yards for the last 5 games. And we're like, what's wrong? What's wrong with Marv?
Yeah.
Right. Also, sometimes guys drop balls. I do think, generally speaking, and I can remember talking to Emeka about this, I think last season, unless I was talking to Jackson about it like 2 years ago. I can't remember. I feel like Ohio State guys drop balls less often than the average college receiver. So
Yeah.
I do think sometimes we're so accustomed to them not dropping any that when they drop a couple, actually that's kind of more the norm, except not here.
I think that's right, because like Julian Fleming got a lot of crap last year for dropping too many passes, but when it actually looked like he actually didn't drop that many, it's just that like it was so glaring when they did because it didn't happen as often. There's nothing wrong with Marv. Like I'm not worried about him dropping passes for the rest of the year. And also too, like Ohio State really wanted a fast start in this game, and they got a fast start because they had a 69-yard drive on their opening drive where Marv was responsible for 63 of those 69 yards. So like he was fine.
First drive, 8 plays, 6 passes, 5 of the 6 to Marv. So kind of worked. But I understand the question because when he drops any, you're just very surprised by it.
Yeah.
All right, Mike, anything else?
Yeah, Nick brings up a point here. He said he's really worried about the Burke injury. He's been fantastic this year and will be much needed next week. So Nick brings that up. My question, kind of piggyback off of what Nick said, if Burke cannot play next week, who's the guys that you guys see needs to step up on that defense in that cornerback position?
So you kind of noticed this, how they aligned when Denzel went out, Landis. What do you think it would be?
Yeah, so Denzel Burke is the boundary corner and Davison Igbinosun is the field corner to the wide side of the field. But when Denzel got hurt, Davison Igbinosun moved to boundary, and initially Jordan Hancock played to the field. And then when they went nickel, they kept Jordan Hancock at nickel, and Jermaine Matthews played field corner, the true freshman, which in and of itself I think is noteworthy that he's positioned himself that way. I was surprised by that because I think boundary lends itself to more like press man, less playing off, less driving down on the ball, more of a premium on your ability to run with guys and then be disruptive at the catch point. And that's just not how they've used Davison Igbinosun this year. And like watching him at Ole Miss, I thought he was much more of like a play in space cover 3 kind of corner than he was like in your face press man kind of corner, which is what Denzel Burke is and loves to be. So that could have been like a emergency plan. And then if they know going into this week, they're not going to have Denzel, maybe that's different. It's all like we always talk about, like who's your backup quarterback in the game, and then who's your backup quarterback when you have a week to prepare. That could be a play here too with the cornerback position. So who steps up is like, it's Jordan Hancock, I think. But also I guess now Jermaine Matthews too, because they're going to play nickel against Penn State. And I think they're still want to use that package where it's Sonny or Jordan Hancock and not just one or the other for the entire game. So like Jermaine Matthews, I think is going to have to step up and do a big spot next week.
I can remember in the preseason, I think with Denzel Burke talking about that Jordan Hancock is like the best off cover corner that he's seen because he's so good at making reads.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it might be maybe in a world where Burke is out, both Igbinosun and Hancock are better to the field. So now who's slightly less uncomfortable on the boundary, and maybe it's Davison, which is why you move him there, put Hancock on the field. And then I do think you could get into a world where maybe you just play Sonny in a few more situations at that inside corner safety spot where normally you'd be putting Jordan in, but now you know what, for this play, our alignment is better with Davison and Jordan outside and Sonny inside, as opposed to moving Jordan inside and playing a true freshman outside. But also, we think Jermaine Matthews is a dog. Like, Jermaine Matthews is the next coming of Denzel Burke, is he not?
Yeah, I think so. I remain very high on him. He had that pick six earlier in the year. He wasn't really challenged, I don't think, today against Purdue. And was Sonny had good coverage on a wheel route today.
Yes, he
I know
did.
that Maryland got him on a couple slot fades last week, but I think he was in decent positioning there. So we'll see how it goes. Like Penn State too, also I think wants to play with multiple tight ends a fair amount of the time. So maybe that helps Ohio State navigate this a little bit. But Denzel Burke is their best or second best defensive player. So whatever amount of time he's out for them it's incredibly important.
I think we can simultaneously say they would really, really miss him because he's excellent. But I also think they could make up for him. Not as well, but I don't think it's that's it, the defense is done situation, because I do think the options we outlined could handle their business more often than not. But you miss a guy who, frankly, is playing like a first-team All-American in the first half of the season than Denzel Burke. Mike, anything else?
Yeah, guys. I mean, I'm gonna say this as a collective or kind of text from all the texters, but a lot of unhappy people with the Peacock broadcast. So I just wanted to bring that up for the texters. So I know you guys wanted to get into that. So I feel like this is a good leadway from them. They're thinking the same thing you guys are.
Delicious, a delicious bird. All right, so we have unhappy people expressing their views. I did a survey. I said, what did you think of the Peacock broadcast? Announcers, replays, camera angles, whatever. How was the broadcast? 10 is excellent. 1 is bad. The texter vote 3.5 average, Landis.
Yeah.
Unsophisticated, once again, which is the thing that when you are accustomed to Ohio State being the number one game on Fox, the number one game on ABC, ESPN, you get used to Joel and Gus, you get used to Fowler and Herb Street. It's hard, man. And also Peacock is not entirely ready for this yet.
No, that's the thing that's disappointing, right? Because I know we're in this world, right, where we got to pay for streaming. I paid for streaming to watch the game too. I'm not dismissing the inconvenience of that. But if you're going to pay for it, then the only difference you should notice is the fact that you had to pay for it, and not that the broadcast was inferior to everything else you come to expect when watching college football games. And this was not that. This was bad. The lack of replays, I was confounding. I guess you're right. Maybe they only had a few cameras in there. And I try not to dog commentators too much, right? Because I think Kyle Rudolph's pretty new to this, and Andrew Siciliano, I think, is not a play-by-play man by trade. He's more of an in-studio host. So I'm not going to get on them too much. They could have been better. The thing that infuriated me was I felt like we missed too many plays. There was one drive in the first half where they didn't have enough commercials to fill their commercial break, and we're staring at a Peacock will be back soon graphic. And when we come back from it, Ohio State had already run 2 plays of a drive. It was they ran a pass that was incomplete and then a run on second down for 8 yards down Hayden. And they were talking about it as they come back from commercial break. I don't know. ESPN has had problems with that in the past where they come back late and you catch a first play of a drive mid play. Peacock just missed 2 full plays, which I don't know how that happens.
Yeah, it's hard because I was noticing it. I started following this Twitter account that just tells you what all the announcer pairings are for all the games. There are so many games in college football. There are so many games. But Ohio State fans are accustomed to being a priority, frankly. And when you're on Peacock right now, it's a priority for NBC, it's a priority for Peacock, but it doesn't feel like a priority. And so it's just lacking in a bunch of different ways. And I found it odd. I do think it's worth noting. I think there's a lot of puffery and smoke blowing, and sometimes we have to pretend things are emotional and inspiring, and it's just I don't know, man. Can we be adults about this? We're not. It's not Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. What are we doing? The Tyler Trent thing is real. I think that what Tyler Trent did for the Purdue football program, and whether you think it contributed to Purdue's win over Ohio State in 2018, and I think a lot of people at Purdue think it did, the emotion of that game. That was a person who truly loved Purdue football and gave everything he had at the end of his life. He put it into Purdue football. And I think Purdue football carries that It's clear they have a gate named after him. His brother is a walk-on on the team. Like that is very real. That is as real to me as anything, any college football situation like that I've seen in my career. Because I do think sometimes we overdo it on some of those things. And there are terrible things that happen in the world, but not all of them inspire football teams. This is so real. And the Peacock broadcast kept talking about what a great piece ESPN Game Day did about it. I was like, why didn't you do a piece?
Yeah.
What are we doing? It's your game. Like you do it. And the play-by-play guy's like, I was like crying watching the ESPN thing. It's like, you guys, it's your game. You know that, right? So I thought that was odd.
There was no pregame element. Like there was nothing.
No.
There was like, you're just sitting there staring at the screen, like waiting for the stream to start. Like that was like, why doesn't the stream start? Because they had people there, right? Or were they in South Bend?
I don't know. Kyle
Like
Rudolph was in South Bend. His head was, at least. I don't know.
But like Joshua Perry was on at halftime talking. Were they were in South? I think they were in South Bend.
I made a peanut butter sandwich at halftime. I don't know.
I think they were in South Bend.
Halftime crew was in South Bend, Bill.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
But regardless, like those people could have been on television for 15 minutes before the game talking about, hey, you're about to watch Ohio State play Purdue. Isn't that cool? Here's a nice piece on Tyler Trent, instead of like just milking ESPN's work that they did to put something together on that. Like it was the whole broadcast was just like hodgepodge and like seemed like unplanned. Like the Purdue right guard like got carted off the field and they're like not even talking about it. They're like they were talking about like Ryan Day's record against unranked teams for like 5 minutes. And like, oh, by the way, this guy just got carted off the field. He's in tears. He's really sad. Like this is a tremendously sad moment for him.
They didn't feel like they covered the Denzel Burke thing in the moment.
I don't know that they talked about it at all. Did they?
Yeah. I don't know. You know what? We're gonna make the the pregame show on Peacock. You know what it's gonna be?
Kings of the North.
Kings of.
Yeah,
you guys would watch us, right? People would watch. We have like 800 people watching now. We get 8. Hey, Peacock, we can deliver an audience of 800 for a pregame show. How's that do you?
Yeah, I like the idea of talking about how bad Peacock is, the bullying them into putting us on there.
Listen, we're not going to pull any punches. We are who we are, and we care about one group of people, and it's Ohio State fans who watch and listen to this show because and we lived it like you guys did. So like it wasn't good enough. I hope it gets better. It's not good enough, especially when you're paying a little bit extra money for it. But I hope that, the more they do it, the better they get. You got to be willing to give a little. I was just happy that Collinsworth guy wasn't on the call. When they came on, it was not a Collinsworth. I was like, yes.
You don't like him? You're not a fan?
No.
Yeah.
Not a fan. All right, Mike, anything else? Or was it just, it's like 400 texts about how terrible the
Yeah, a lot of texts about Peacock. Eric brings up a good point, though. He says, any reason to be concerned about the Devin Brown day at over 100 yards rushing for Purdue? Any reason to be concerned about the Ohio State run defense?
So Devin Brown was like second team All Big Ten last year, I think. Like he's good. Maybe he wasn't second. He's not Blake Corum. Maybe he was honorable mention. He's not Blake Corum. He's not Katron Allen and Nick Singleton at Penn State. He's a solid running back. And it's in the realm of like, you can't stop everything. He's a good football player. Did you see things, Landis, that made you worried about the Ohio State run defense?
No, I mean, not especially. 7 carries for 30 yards in the first quarter, 10 for 43 in the second quarter, 7 for 9 in the third quarter. And then they started running a little bit in the fourth quarter. So like there was a run here or there. Looking at big plays, Purdue had 4 rushing plays of more than 10 yards, all in the first half. A couple of long ones from Maccabee, two 20-yarders from Maccabee, and he had one on the first drive of the game too. So no, I don't think I'm overly concerned about that. I think it's more of game state than anything else.
All right. So, Mike, any last ones for you before we hit a couple more topics and get out of here?
No, that's about it from the texters. Like I said, a lot of concern about Denzel Burke's injury, kind of trying to get an update on those and in the broadcast and its general. And I think we hit on everything they were talking about. A lot of, like we said, a lot of questions about Devin Brown in the run package that they brought in for him too. So I think the texters are overall pretty satisfied with the game. Kind of boring, not exciting from a game standpoint, but overall I think they're pretty happy with the week.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think that makes sense. Last thing I kind of want to talk about, two things I want to talk about before we get to a tiny little look ahead to Ohio State, Penn State next week, which will be another noon kick. This one, of course, in Ohio Stadium. Kyle McCord last week, kind of an iffy first half and a much better second half. This week, 16 of 28 for 276, 3 touchdowns. Once again, no interceptions. I thought, pretty nicely in control for most of the game, especially in a world where you're missing a guy like Emeka Egbuka and all the injuries in the run game we talked about. 9.9 yards per completion. He's thrown for at least 250 yards in 4 of the last 5 games. Again, in things you want to see going into Penn State, which might have the best defense in the country. I thought the quarterback looked good.
I thought he looked good. 16 of 28 looks better without there's 4 drops credited in the stat broadcast stats.
Okay.
So that's a much more efficient day if he gets credit for those 4. I did not think any of the 4 were like bad throws by him, maybe slightly off target a time or two, but good throws, good enough throws. I really liked the ball. He ripped down the seam to Carnell Tate for the 60-yarder. I thought that was a pretty decisive, confident throw, and I want to see more of that from him. So yeah, good. I'm trying to think, like, he didn't have a play where I thought he put the ball in harm's way much either. Did he? Had the one play that was like tipped at the line and like landed kind of near a defender, but I think most games he's had a play or had a throw or maybe a throw or 2 that have been like, oh, that was close.
Yeah.
I don't know that he had many of those in this game.
And they kind of talked about it on the broadcast. I did agree, like that play where he got flushed out and then chucked it deep to Xavier Johnson. The idea of, I'm going to escape the rush, get to a safe spot for a nanosecond, and then look down the field, because that's where something may have broken free. And he gave a 50-50 ball to Xavier Johnson. It just so happens that that's not Xavier Johnson's specialty. If he had been throwing that to Emeka Egbuka, I think Emeka Egbuka might catch that. And that's the kind of play that might beat Penn State. That awareness of I thought he did a pretty good job, like evading pressure. Like he's pretty slippery back there. And again, that I think is really going to matter next week. He got sacked on one play. There's a play where Josh Fryer just got absolutely positively smoked. Chop Robinson, we're going to talk about him a lot in this coming week, and just the Penn State defensive line and the way they can get after a quarterback. I think Kyle's ability to evade and then make plays out of that, I think he showed some of that again today, which is a good sign.
So they don't even have the Xavier Johnson listed as a drop. So, but I would count that as I thought that was a really good throw.
Yeah.
So that's 5, right? Yeah. You're talking 21 of 28 for what, 350 yards maybe in 4 touchdowns. If those plays go differently. So I thought it was a good game for him. The only, like, he does, I don't know what he was doing on the intentional grounding play, but like, don't do that. Just take the sack.
That's right. I think that's right. All right. Last thing I wanted to talk about is something that we, again, were discussing in our Slack conversation. Ryan Day got hot. How do we think Ryan Day is doing? Like angry sideline Ryan Day. Is that good, bad, just life as a coach? What do we think? Because he was, I think, angry with maybe Justin Fry and Tony Alford after a delay of game. He got on Kyle when he came off the field about that. I think you noted maybe a displeasure with the Josh Simmons, perhaps holding penalty.
After the whole, yeah. I actually think it's good. I think that if I can put on my psychoanalyst hat, I guess, for a second. I think
we love that hat.
I think that's
almost as good as a Phillies hat, the psychoanalyst hat.
Thank you. They're very similar if you think about it. I think Ryan Day sometimes channels that energy to the wrong places, like gets preoccupied with stuff that he shouldn't, whether that's like people telling him his team's not tough or like officials. And I think like holding players and coaches accountable for those mistakes is a much better use of that energy. So I don't know. I guess maybe some people feel some type of way about coaches yelling at players and coaches on the sideline. I don't really know that I do. It is football after all. So I didn't have much of an issue with it. Like, they have whatever their limitations are as an offense, I think are largely self-inflicted. So I think it's about time that Ryan Day started getting on the people who are inflicting those things. So I didn't have an issue with it.
Yeah. Some delay I think they had 2 delays that like, he just can't. He was like, what are we doing? Like, what, like snap the ball. Like that kind of stuff, like pre-snap penalties is like the way to make Ryan Day blow his stack. All right. This is the little teeny Penn State peek ahead. How do you feel about Ohio State's chances against Penn State next week after today's win for Ohio State? These were the choices I gave, Landis. Awesome. The Buckeyes are definitely going to win. Very good. Ohio State is in great shape versus a good opponent. Good. Feeling solid about Ohio State, but Penn State is legit. Just okay. OSU has some issues, and Penn State is really tough. Or bad. I think the Buckeyes have a good chance to lose. What would you vote? So awesome, very good, good, okay, bad.
I would vote good.
You would vote good. So you would vote the middle.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think won from the texters?
The one in between that and bad. Like, okay.
Okay. So good won, 44% good. Just okay, 30%. Very good, 15%. Bad, 8%. Awesome, 3%. So the middle got almost half, but then the extremities, when you compare the extremities, the more negative extremity won out in both situations. So I think that's probably more about Penn State than it is Ohio State. I think it's like, hey, the offensive line for Ohio State's still not great. Man, I hope the running back room gets healthy. I hope Emeka plays next week. But I hope that's primarily a nod to what we have talked about as a very, very, very good Penn State defense, good run game, good left tackle, a quarterback who at least has some talent, even though he's young and still finding his way. If most people are in the middle and maybe slightly more pessimistic than optimistic, do you think it's because they respect Penn State or because they have real worries about this Ohio State team coming off this win?
I think it's because they have real worries about Ohio State, and it's probably specifically the weakness of Ohio State does not mesh well with the strength of Penn State, and it's the offensive line against the defensive line. So I think it's those two things together. There's probably a little bit in there too, like for people that are feeling really good, a little bit of not trusting James Franklin to beat Ohio State, which I think is fair. But I don't know. I think good and okay makes sense. Like I said, that's where I would be. I think there are, we're going to dive into this game, but like, I think there are reasons to feel very confident about Ohio State's defense against Penn State's offense, and reasons, frankly, to be a little worried about Ohio State's offense going up against Penn State's defense. So like right in the middle.
We will cover that in depth on Kings of the North on Monday, where we go through all the best teams in Northern football. We'll also talk about the Washington-Oregon game that is going on as we speak, the Iowa-Wisconsin game that is going on as we speak. And certainly we always preview the biggest games. And again, like this Ohio State-Penn State game is gigantic. I would like to, Landis, we always rank the best teams in the North. I would like to rank the best teams in the North and then decide what the best regular season wins in the playoff era are for all those ranked teams. Because my question is, would this be Penn State's biggest win? Of the playoff era? And then we can talk about, well, here was Oregon's biggest win. And this might, if Washington, whoever wins this Washington-Oregon game, this might be their biggest win.
Mm-hmm.
And we could talk about what Michigan's biggest win was, what Ohio State's biggest win was, what Utah's biggest win was, all those kind of things. But I would like us to try to contextualize Ohio State, Penn State a little bit. So we'll do that from a Northern perspective on Monday. And then on Wednesday on Kings of Columbus, when you and I get together, I think we'll get very nitty gritty specifically about that game, the matchups, who has advantages where and why, a lot of statistics, a lot of us rewatching games and really dig into that. So we'll do it two different ways, two different shows. And then all week, the podcast daily every morning on this feed. Buckeye Q, Zach Bourne will be, I think, with Austin on Sunday as usual. Ohio State got a commit today, right? They got a commit during the game. Is that the first commit during a game since that guy committed like during the national championship game? Remember that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So make a list of guys who committed during games. So Berm will have all kinds of recruiting stuff in this feed this week. You guys, if you've been around, you kind of have a feel for it by now. We go short and fun. We go more in depth. We go analysis on the team. We go analysis on recruiting. We kind of cover whatever you care about with the Ohio State Buckeyes. And we certainly appreciate you guys being part of this post-game show. This is a priority for us. We want to bring you great, interesting, informed discussion, have you guys be involved right after the game. The best way to do that is be a tech subscriber, 614-662-4509. So if you're joining us there, awesome. If you're joining us on YouTube, on your podcast feed, we are incredibly grateful for you making us part of your week. For now, Ohio State moves to 6-0 with a 41-7 win at Purdue. For our great producer, Mike Urostowski, for Bill Landis, I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was the postgame show on the podcast.